Hello and welcome to the show. Today I am here with the story, a tale of a Chevrolet Cruze that the rather vindictive gods of Forza would curse. All I wanted to do was complete a race. However, my car was to be invisible. Not consistently though. This curse is not that kind. You would not know who would be able to see your car and who would not, which, as you can imagine, makes racing rather difficult. Rather difficult indeed. Our story begins at the Nürburgring GP circuit, me starting all the way down at the very back, and I was unaware of the curse at this particular point. There was some bumping, there was a bit of paint swapping, and I ended up being forced across the grass. I just assumed cars were unaware of quiet vehicles around them. However, it quickly became apparent that cars could not see me. My vehicle could not make a single impact on their trajectory, and they could push me around as if my vehicle weighed absolutely nothing. Again, at this stage, with the angles that vehicles had been at, I was still unsure as to whether the curse was in full effect, having to, well, do the best that I could in dealing with the traffic. As someone escaped the hairpin, I was able to get a better run up towards the hill. Now, this fast S-bend is dangerous at the best of times, but when the car behind you can't see you and gives you a little bit of nudge at the most important part, well, I end up on the gravel with nowhere else to go. I thought, surely the vehicle behind me now would be able to see my car. I went naturally defensive with him having a much better run. I get a little bit of assistance on the way out, but no. My luck was not that good as the car behind, again, exactly the same. It's taking his normal racing line where you would normally position the car. Unaware that my vehicle is there, I get a small bump, and that's enough to send me off onto the grass. Now, I get back going again from all of this, still determined to try and make my way up. The car that I just gave a shunt there was a vehicle that could see me, because, well, the collision had an impact on him. However, the car alongside me, nope, that definitely couldn't, as again, moves across to take his normal racing line, and I am unfortunately, well, there. And we go spinning off and play on the gravel, and things were not looking so good for me, stuck down the order. Now, we did find some cars that we could race with sensibly. These two ahead having their own little fight into the final corner, but at this stage I didn't know if I could race with these cars sensibly. I didn't know if they were going to be able to see my vehicle, whether I would be able to get a pass done cleanly. Now, the car ahead goes very early on the brakes into turn 1. I have a big dive up the inside. I mean, I'm working on the assumption that these cars could see me simply because they didn't crash into me every single corner. I mean, it might have been an amazing pass that they have realised, but either way, I got an overtake. I think that was about the extent of the enjoyment from the race here at Nürburgring. Yeah, we kind of found some cars that could see us. We headed to Spa, thinking surely the curse must have worn off by now, and things were looking relatively promising on the opening lap. I should point out, I was not the only one cursed with such poor luck. There were plenty of other vehicles, between cars lagging around and cars not being able to see each other. It's a miracle anybody ever made it to the finish line of a race. The group ahead could, I think, largely see one another, and this time around, cars were mostly able to see me, if jittering around all over the place horribly. I got a little bit of a bump, but nothing too terrible, as I can't quite get my car turned in soon enough. I end up out wide, and for once a vehicle is actually, well, driving sensibly. They can see my vehicle, they get an overtake done cleanly, they'll defend into the next corner from me, which again, a good sign that somebody can see my car is when they are taking, you know, normal defensive lines, and we could continue racing. I'd lost a place, sure, but we hadn't been fired off the circuit. Lag would cause more issues for me, having to try and dodge vehicles that would then suddenly disappear back off up the road again, which would pull me back down the order ever so slightly. However, once more, the ghost car curse would see me fired off at the end of the straight. Again, vehicle behind taking a normal racing line, braked just a smidge later than I had done, which fires me off the corner, although rejoining once more vehicles are able to see me. They're taking alternative lines to avoid my vehicle. I'm having to fend in towards the next corner. So, yeah, Spa had been better. I think I'd started higher up the order, and a few of the cars higher up the field were able to see my car. I don't know how many vehicles I was invisible to, but yeah, certainly at least one we were completely invisible to. And then we head to Road America, where things go even more bizarre and even more downhill for the poor Chevrolet. Once again, decent spot on the grid for me as we head in towards a very tight turn one. Now, a little bit of bumping through here is fairly normal. My car gets tipped and turned. I'm fairly sure the vehicle ahead of me there couldn't see me. I mean, there was no impact from the small shunt from me. As a car draws alongside me, my vehicle gets fired. I physically cannot turn the car to the left despite my best efforts until I come to a complete standstill when I finally get freed of invisible force and then very nearly cause a big accident, possibly if those cars could have seen me, when I suddenly get steering back. That's a new one as well. That's not part of the invisibility curse. That is something else entirely. Just the hand of the Forza gods dictated that my car should go and take a trip across the gravel or grass and into the wall. It was not a good start to this race. So, after a couple of laps, we rejoined the back of the field, only to learn that these vehicles could certainly not see me either, as we get a very, very big tip sideways. Now, again, that vehicle doesn't know that they're doing anything wrong at all. This is not intentional. You physically couldn't push my Chevrolet Cruze in that manner if it had existed on their screen. So it's not their driver's fault. There's nothing that they can do, but it put me in a rather awkward predicament because the car ahead of me had taken damage in a lag shunt on the opening lap. So I was significantly faster around this circuit and significantly faster in a straight line. But how do you overtake? How do you overtake a car that can't see you, but a car that will still push your vehicle around? I can't have a big dive up the inside. And, you know, we're in identical cars here. Okay, I've got slightly more speed because mine's not broken. But we're in identical cars, we've got identical braking power, essentially. So how on earth do I get a pass completed here? Because if I try and get up the inside, we're going to end up, it's just going to turn into me. And because my car is effectively, well, weighs nothing on his end, I will always be the one that's batted out of the way. So I was having to try and line up my passes and plan everything out incredibly methodically and make the most of any opportunity that I could possibly get to try and dive past a car that can't see me. Now, there was a big mess into turn one. Again, I largely believe that these were caused by a combination of cars lagging and vehicles being invisible to one another. Of course, drivers make mistakes, but there was an extra amount of weirdness going on with cars being unable to see one another. You can see a bit of lag going on. Now, with two vehicles ahead of me fighting, I wondered if perhaps I could use this to my advantage, although I had quickly learned that said two vehicles, neither of them could see me. I now had two cars stuck ahead of me that I would have a really, really tough time to try and find ways past. They could see one another as they were having their own little race, but neither of them would be able to see me. I was not best pleased, thought I'd go for a cheaty tactic by taking a shortcut. I would then immediately be calmed and almost crashed into the bridge because, yeah, they physically cannot see my car. They're going back to the normal racing line where my slightly shortcutting of the track had led me, and we get away with it. I also learned how to very quickly catch the car when starting being pushed around by people. Managed to keep it out of trouble a few times, which is always helpful. My best bet for getting past these cars cleanly was if they made a small mistake on their own. And they ran a little bit wide, got a bit of understeer through a corner somewhere, and I could sneak up the inside and get past cleanly because, for example, here, having a look into turn one, I can't pull alongside. I can pull alongside fully, but I'll always be swatted out of the way, so it wasn't going to work. I get a good drive down this back straight. The tyres were also starting to hurt, but that was the least of my concerns, quite frankly. I get a good drive down here. The problem is we're both catching the vehicle ahead, and I know that I'm going to end up squeezed against the wall because the vehicle is going to always want to have a dive at the inside into this corner, not knowing that I'm there. I'm always going to end up fighting against the wall. Now, I did wonder if perhaps vehicles are side by side. If I can be close enough to somebody, then I might be able to sneak past because they're giving each other space. So I can use the fact that they're racing one another, that they're giving each other space. Wondered if I could use that as a tactic to get past, but trying to follow a car close enough and carry exactly the same speed at all the exact same points was proving a little bit difficult in all of that to get the pass done. again, in identical cars, they're also likely to try and jump back into line very, very quickly, and I'm not sure you'd have enough of a gap for me to be able to do it. We get a good run with a car out onto the grass, but I'm on that racing line. I'm on that line that they're going to want to try and rejoin. I'd hoped we might have had enough acceleration to have pulled past by the time we got to the braking zone, but no, we couldn't quite get done. And around this long final corner, I'd hoped the vehicles ahead would run, that little bit understeery wide so I could sneak up the inside and get clear before we get to turn one, but no such luck. I was having to be increasingly patient around here. Try everything that you can, look at every possible opportunity, but it wasn't going to happen. I also didn't help myself with not being particularly good off of the opening corner there as we head down once more this next straight, where we have the advantage over the 13th placed car, but I can't really use said advantage at kind of the point I am in the track. Again, they're fighting one another and compromising one another. We're looking for a way around the outside, not quite going to happen there. Even if I could draw my nose alongside, it isn't ever going to work. What did eventually see me past was a mistake. The vehicle ahead, in being so close up behind, just didn't quite see his turning point, and that little bit, or carried a little bit too much speed, ran wide, took a trip across the grass, and that would see me through without fears of being, well, taken out. However, this put me in an even worse situation than I had been before, because the car ahead of me can't see me, and the car behind is going to be catching up. I can't waste time trying to find a way past, because the longer I wait, the quicker the vehicle behind is going to catch, and they will just fire me out of the way. So I had to try and get quite brave, but the problem was still not quite in a helpful position. I was, catching massively. My best bet was to try and sneak a pass, be very brave on the way in, brake as late as I dare, and hope that I get it stopped. I did get through, but in doing so, my line would see me out wide, and as they fall back onto that normal racing line, just the gap isn't going to stay there. It was a valiant effort, so very nearly worked. I got my car through briefly. However, didn't last. Might take a little bit of a shortcut. At this point, I don't think you could really blame me for the amount of track exploration. I was finding ways to deal with my ghostness. Okay, and if track exploration was the way to do it, then so be it. Either way, these two are going to go back to fighting one another, and I was back in the same situation I'd been a couple of laps ago. However, as we head into this final corner, I spotted the opportunity I needed. With a vehicle running wide, I could fire my car up the inside and get the pass completed. Legitimate overtake done, with the other vehicle not being able to see me. Unfortunately, into turn one, and with the angle of approach that I was on, the angle that I was heading at is never going to end well for me in trying to get that pass completed. Stopping it into turn one, I can't defend from that one. In all of this, though, there would be a stroke of luck. The two cars fought one another so hard, in the end, they would have a collision on their own, with bumping somebody off into the wall, the other car wakes up, and I would eventually get both places. I mean, it's a moral victory, I guess, in all of this. A very strange experience. It was like extra super duper planning to try and get overtakes done, and it did work. You could just about get overtakes done, but holding on to the position was near impossible. With your car being invisible, holding on to that position, unless you could run away instantly, you just couldn't hold on to the position, because you'd always end up having your car out of line, be slow into another corner, and then you'd be punted around by the car that couldn't see you because they didn't know to avoid you there. Now, I've made a silly video about this, and I will be honest, this is a relatively rare bug. It is something that is known to happen from time to time. It's something that up until now I'd never experienced on a Forza game. It has happened on Forza 6, it has happened on Forza 7. This particular evening, I was having internet issues and the Forza servers were having internet issues. Put all of them together, and this is what we got. It was awful in terms of racing. With my car being invisible, as I said, there were 3 or 4 other vehicles that were having similar invisibility issues, quite a lot of lag going on with a number of cars as well, jumping about around the circuit, jittering around, making it very difficult for cars that could see one another to race each other properly. So, yeah, it was an utter mess with this, which is a shame because the cars themselves aren't too bad. There were a few people that could see each other and weren't lagging horribly. The racing was okay. But so many of us just had an utterly broken evening. It was always a waste of time with a lot of these races. Yeah, I had a weird experience racing two cars that couldn't see me. I kind of managed to make some fun of it with the the way that we were battling. But yeah, it's a stupid bug. I don't know how on earth it's got to this stage now where we have a game in which cars can't see one another but still affect one another in multiplayer races. I don't know how we have got to that. So yeah, this was the experience of trying to race a mostly invisible car. It's a different sort of challenge. I mean, intentionally, if I could, replicate these results, you could have intentionally interesting challenges. But as it is, yeah, not quite. But there we go. That is going to be it for the tale of the invisible Chevrolet. Eventually, it did come out on top, which, well, of our little battle, which I guess is something. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.